everybody, and welcome to our Reading Through History knockoff video. Today we'll be talking about the story of the Chinese in America. This video is produced by Lily Wang and myself, Jessica Wong. We are Samurai students enrolled in Mr. Peter Picconi's 2020 to 2021 AP US History course. The story of the Chinese in America began in 1844, the time period when the Chinese started to migrate to America. But before getting into an explanation as to why the Chinese came to America, we will first address the reason why the Chinese felt the need to leave China, specifically the push factors. As is often the case, it's about the money. Furthermore, the primary push factor had to do with the economy in China during 1844. The Qing dynasty had just been defeated by the British during the Opium War, which left the common people in South China suffering from severe economic problems. It was so bad that historian Iris Chang has said that the Chinese peasants' lives were spent in non-stop back-breaking labor, while the urban poor were used as beasts of burden. Therefore, starting in 1847, many Chinese began to move to Gamsan, also known as the Gold Mountain, their interpretation of America, to find prosperity in an industrializing United States. Early on, the main factor for the Chinese people to come to America was the 1848 California Gold Rush. America had just defeated Mexico in the Mexican-American War. That same year that the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, gold was discovered in California. People from all around the world, including China, came to America in search of quick riches. In fact, during the gold rush, 85% of the Chinese in California were working in the mines. Some Americans were very impressed by the Chinese, who, according to Iris Chang, had a reputation for hard work. While the famous American writer Mark Twain wrote that the Chinese were never disorderly and lazy ones do not exist. Some Chinese struck it rich, such as two miners who discovered a 240-pound gold nugget. However, many did not find a lot of gold, and most faced racism. Many Chinese were harassed, and so the first sentences that the Chinese would learn in English were "he assaulted me without provocation, and he claimed my mine," in reaction to the attacks they were facing. However, the Chinese workers made the American workforce more diverse. When the gold ran out, many Chinese moved to San Francisco, where they started America's first Chinatown. By 1880, 9.1% of the city's population was Chinese, and so the white population began to become exposed to Chinese culture. Many Chinese opened restaurants, and America's love for Chinese food began with the creation of chop suey, a dish of mixed vegetables, rice, and meat. Additionally, Chinese businessmen often started laundries because they ran out of other job options and a language barrier which left them incapable of choosing other work. However, some Chinese immigrants also formed tongs, Asian gangs in California that were involved with opium, a popular drug. Other Chinese immigrants began to work for the railroads starting in 1865, building the Central Pacific Railroad, which ran through the Rocky Mountains. Chinese workers could even lay up to 10 miles of railroad a day, and as many as 1,200 Chinese gave their lives during the construction. Thanks to the Chinese, the railroad was built and met up with the Union Pacific Railroad in Utah, which created America's first continental railroad. However, Chinese railroad workers faced racism since they had to work more and were paid less than white workers. In fact, Chinese workers were paid $31 to $35 a month, while white workers were paid $40. As a result, the Chinese workers near the town of Truckee went on strike in 1867. The strike was a failure. As more Chinese moved to the cities, they faced backlash. By the 1870s, there were 200,000 Chinese living in America. The Chinese worked for far less money than the Irish workers. As a result, many white workers began to harass the Chinese. The situation got worse after the Panic of 1873, after which a man named Dennis Kearney, a member of the Workingmen's Party, began to travel through California, saying that the Chinese must go. This was part of nativism, or a reaction against immigrants by people living in the United States. These sentiments also existed in Los Angeles, California, which was a very diverse city where many Irish, Germans, Mexicans, and Chinese lived. In 1871, two Los Angeles tongs were fighting against each other in the streets. In response, a Mexican sheriff arrived to stop the fight, but the Chinese tongs shot at the sheriff, so he called for backup. Robert Thompson, a white man who showed up to help the sheriff, was shot by the Chinese, and word spread around the community that the Chinese tongs had killed a lot of people. although they had actually only killed one man. The Chinese Tongs were then surrounded in the Coronel Adobe House. Germans, Irish, and Mexicans then broke in and dragged the Chinese Tong members out of the adobe and lynched them. Some of the lynchers grabbed other innocent Chinese people and killed them too. There were 17 Chinese lynched in total. The killers were found guilty but was set free afterwards. The anti-Chinese sentiment spread through the whole country, and in 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which banned Chinese immigration. Not only that, but also prevented the Chinese living in America from getting citizenship. It was renewed in 1892 and 1902, when it was extended permanently. The act was finally repealed in 1943 during World War II, since China became an ally to the US. Despite the difficulties the Chinese faced, they continued to work hard and enrich the cities with their cultural and economic contributions.